Hi everyone, how's it going? I hope y'all are having a good day. Mayhaps? I have to fucking read something from Shadows from like last stream. You get to fucking hear it in a soft, melodic, not really melodic, but in do I have the fucking DM? Probably. These violent delights have violent ends, and in their triumph die like fire and powder, which as they kiss consumed of sweetest honey is loathsome in his own deliciousness, and in the taste confounds the appetite. Therefore love moderately, long love doth, so too swift arrives, as tardy as too slow. You happy now, Shadows? I hope so. I try my best to make everybody happy. Hi, how's it going? I am Nami. You're welcome. It sounds about right, to be honest with you. Don't you fucking good girl me for that. I won't fucking fight you. Anyways, hi everyone. We're doing a soft, short stream because, yeah, my family is, sleeping, and I am still at my big brother's house. So, gonna be reading books, because books are nice, right, Chad? Books are nice. I hope I got all the fucking sound redeems, because no, we're not doing sound redeems tonight. I refuse. I hope y'all are having a good night, though. It is 10:45 in the Eastern Lands. So yeah. Goodness gracious me, I hope life is fine. Shit. Goodness. Hi. Alright, so, we're gonna start out with a, short story, The Fall of the House of Usher. If you know, you know. Yes, there's a Netflix series. Yes, it's kinda good. No, it is not that one. Oh, goodness me. Should probably pick up the mic. This mic is going to be the death of me, I think. Hi everyone. It's a little closer now. I hope that's a good thing. During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens, I had been passing alone on horseback through a singularly dreary tract of country, and at length found myself, as the shades of the evening drew on, within view of the melancholy house of Usher. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I say insufferable, for the feeling was unrelieved by any of that half pleasurable, because poetic sentiment with which the mind usually receives even the sternest natural images of the desolate or terrible. I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house, and the simple landscape features of the domain, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye, like windows upon the few rank sedges, and upon the few white trunks of decayed trees, with another depression of soul, which I compare to no earthly sensation more properly than to after dream of the reveller upon opium. The bitter lapse into everyday life, the hideous dropping off of the veil. There was an iciness, a sinking, a sickening of the heart, an unredeemed dreariness of thought which no goading of the imagination could torture into aught of the sublime. What was it? I paused to think What was it that so unnerved me in the contemplation of the House of Usher? It was a mystery all insoluble, nor could I grapple with the shadowy fancies that crowded upon me as I pondered. I was forced to fall back upon the unsatisfactory conclusion that while, beyond doubt, there are combinations of very simple objects which have the power of thus affecting us, still the analysis of this power lies among the considerations beyond our depth. It was possible, I reflected, that a mere arrangement of the particulars of the scene, of the details of the picture, would be sufficient to modify or perhaps annihilate its capacity for sorrowful impression, and acting upon this idea, I reined my horse to the precipitous brink of a black and lurid tarn that lay in an unruffled luster by the dwelling, and gazed down, but with a shudder even more thrilling than before, upon the remodeled and inverted images of the grey sedge, and the ghastly tree stems, and the vacant and eye-like windows. Nevertheless, in this mansion of gloom, I now proposed to myself a sojourn of some weeks. Its proprietor, Roderick Usher, had been one of my boon companions in boyhood, but many years had elapsed since our last meeting. A letter, however, had recently reached me in a distant part of the country, a letter from him, which in its wildly importune nature had admitted of no other than a personal reply. The MS gave evidence of nervous agitation. The writer spoke of acute bodily illness, of a mental disorder which oppressed him, and of an earnest desire to see me as his best and indeed his only personal friend, also high solid, with a view of attempting, by the cheerfulness of my society, some alleviation of his malady. It was the manner in which of all this, and much more was said. It was the apparent heart that went with his request, which allowed me no room for hesitation. I accordingly obeyed forthwith what I still considered a very singular summons, although as boys we had been intimate associates, yet I really knew little of my friend. His reserve had always been excessive and habitual. I was aware, however, that his very ancient family had been noted, time out of mind, for a particular sensibility of temperament displaying itself through long ages. In many works of exalted art, and manifested of late in repeated deeds of the munificent yet unobtrusive charity, as well as in a passionate devotion to the intricacies, perhaps even more than to the orthodox and easily recognizable beauties of musical science. I had learned, too, the very remarkable fact that the stem of the Usher race, all time honored as it was, had put forth, at no period, any enduring branch. In other words, that the entire family lay in the direct line of descent. It had always, with very trifling and very temporary variation, so lain. It was with this deficiency I considered, while running over in thought the perfect keeping of character of the premises with the accredited character of the people, and while speculating upon the possible influence which the one, in the long lapse of centuries, might have exercised upon the other. It was this deficiency, perhaps, of collateral issue, and the consequent undeviating transmission from the sire to son of the patrimony with the name, which had at length so identified the two as to merge the original title of the estate in the quaint and equivocal appellation of the House of Usher, an appellation which seemed to include, in the minds of the peasantry who used it, both the family and the family mansion. I have said that the sole effect of my somewhat childish experiment, that of looking down within the tarn, had been to deepen the singular impression. There can be no doubt that the consciousness of the rapid increase of my superstition, for why should I not so term it, so mainly to accelerate the increase itself, such I have long known. It is a paradoxical law of all sentiments having terror as a basis, and it might have been for this reason only that when I again uplifted my eyes to the house itself, from its image in the pool, there grew in my mind a strange fancy, a fancy so ridiculous indeed that I but mention it to show the vivid force of the sensations which oppressed me so. I had so worked upon my imagination as to really to believe that about the whole mansion and domain there hung an atmosphere peculiar to themselves and their immediate vicinity, an atmosphere which had no affinity with the air of heaven, but which had reeked up from the decayed trees and the grey wall and the silent tarn, a pestilent and mystic vapor, dull, sluggish, faintly discernible, and leaden-hued, shaking off from my spirit what must have been a dream. I scanned more narrowly a real aspect of the building. Its principal feature seemed to be that of excessive antiquity. The discoloration of ages had been great. Minute fungi overspread the whole exterior, hanging in the fine tangled webwork from the caves, yet all this was apart from any extraordinary dilapidation. No portion of the masonry had fallen, and there appeared to be a wild inconsistency between its still perfect adaptation of parts and the crumbling condition of the individual stones. In this, there was much that reminded me of the specious totality of old woodwork, which has rotted for long years in some neglected vault, with no disturbance from the breath of the external air. Beyond this indication of extensive decay, however, the fabric gave little token of instability. Perhaps the eye of a scrutinizing observer may have discovered a barely perceptible fissure which extended from the roof of the building in front, made its way down the wall in a zigzag direction until it became lost in sullen waters of the tarn. Noticing these things, I rode over a short causeway to the house. A servant in waiting took my horse, and I entered the Gothic archway of the hall. A valet, a stealthy step, thence conducted me in silence through many dark and intricate passages in my progress of the studio of the master. Much that I encountered on the way contributed, I know not how, to heighten the vague sentiments of which I have already spoken, while the objects around me, while the carvings of the ceilings, the somber tapestries on the walls, the ebon blackness of the floors, the phantasmagoric armorial trophies, which rattled as I strode, were but matters to which, or to such as which, I had been accustomed from my infancy. While I hesitated not to acknowledge how familiar was all this, I still wondered to find how unfamiliar were the fancies which ordinary images were stirring up. On one of the staircases, I met the physician of the family. His countenance, I thought, wore a mingled expression of low cunning and perplexity. He accosted me with trepidation and passed on. The valet now threw open a door and ushered me into the presence of his master. I hope the volume is okay, by the way, as no one has said anything. The room in which I found myself was very large and lofty. The windows were long and narrow and pointed at so vast a distance from the black oaken floor as to be altogether inaccessible from within. Feeble gleams of encrimsoned light made their way through the trellised panes and served to render sufficiently distinct the more prominent objects around. The eye, however, struggled in vain to reach the remote angles of the chamber, or the recesses of the vaulted and fretted ceiling. Dark draperies hung upon the walls. The general furniture was profuse, comfortless, antique, and tattered. Many books and musical instruments lay scattered about, and failed to give any vitality to the scene. I felt that I breathed an atmosphere of sorrow. An air of stern, deep, and irredeemable gloom hung over and pervaded all. Upon my entrance, Usher arose from the sofa from which he had been lying at full length, and greeted me with a vivacious form which had so much in it. I at first thought of an overdone cordiality, of the constrained effort, of the inhuman of the world. A glance, however, at his countenance convinced me of his perfect sincerity. We sat down, and for some moments, while he spoke not, I gazed upon him with a feeling half of pity, half of awe. Surely the man had never before been so terribly altered in so brief a period as had Roderick Usher, and was with difficulty that I could bring myself to admit the identity of the one being before me with the companion of my early boyhood. Yet the character of his face had been at all times remarkable, a cadaverous of complexion, an eye large, liquid, and luminous beyond comparison, lips somewhat thin and very pallid, but of a surprisingly beautiful curve, a nose of a delicate Hebrew model, but with the breadth of nostril unusual in such similar formations, Lord. A finely molded chin, speaking in its want of prominence, of a want of moral energy, hair of a more than web-like softness, attenuity. These features, with an inordinate expansion above the regions of the temple, made up together a countenance not easily to be forgotten. And now, in the mere exaggeration of the prevailing character of these features, and of the expression they were wont to convey, lay so much of change that I doubted to whom I spoke. The now ghastly pallor of the skin, and now miraculous luster of the eye, above all things startled and even awed me. Silken hair had too suffered to grow all unheeded, and as in its gross and gossamer texture, it floated rather than fell about the face. I could not, even with effort, connect its arabesque expression with any idea of simple humanity. In the manner of my friend, I was at once struck with an incoherence and inconsistency, and soon I found this to arise from a series of feeble and futile struggles to overcome a habitual trepidancy and excessive nervous agitation. For something of this nature I had indeed been prepared, no less by his letter than by reminiscence of certain boyish traits, and by conclusions deduced from his peculiar physical conformation and temperament. His action was alternatively vivacious and sullen. His voice varied rapidly from a tremulous decision, when the animal spirit seemed utterly in abeyance, to that species of energetic concision, that abrupt, weighty, unhurried, and hollow-sounding enunciation, that leaden self-balance, and perfectly modulated guttural utterance, which may be observed in the lost drunkard or the irreclaimable eater of opium during the periods of his most intense excitement. Hi, Crazy. How you doing, sweetie? It was thus that he spoke of the object of my visit, of his earnest desire to see me, and of the solace he expected me to afford him. He entered at some length into what he conceived to be the nature of his malady. It was, he said, a constitutional and a family evil, and one for which he despaired to find a remedy. A mere nervous affection, he immediately added, which would undoubtedly soon pass off. It displayed itself in a host of unnatural sensations. Some of these, as he detailed them, interested and bewildered me, although perhaps the terms and the general manner of the narration had their weight. He suffered much from a morbid acuteness of the senses. The most insipid food was alone endurable. He could wear only garments of certain texture. The odors of all flowers were oppressive. His eyes were tortured by even a faint light, and there were but peculiar sounds, and these from stringed instruments which did not inspire him with horror. Yeah, this is the fall of the House of Usher, Crazy. To an anomalous species of horror. I found him a bounden slave. Look! That scared me. That scared me more than it should have. Hi! Hello, Raiders. Holy shit. Hi! QB! Hi, sweetie! Hello! Hello, hello, hello! That scared me. Hi! Hi, Raiders! How are y'all doing tonight? You scared the ever-living fuck out of me, though. Hi, QB! Angel Hero for the win. Hi, loves. To an anomalous species of terror, I found him a bounden slave. I shall perish, said he. I must perish in this deplorable folly. Thus, and did not otherwise shall I be lost. I dread the events of the future, not in themselves, but in their result. Hello, QB. How are you doing, sweetie? Are you, what did y'all stream? Did y'all have fun? I hope y'all did. We're having cozy time right now. We love cozy time. If you need to raid and run, that's fine. If you're not, I totally understand. You can, hang out. We're reading The Fall of the House of Usher right now. I feel that. I cry over video games too. Final Fantasy XIV killed me. I shuddered at the thought of any, even the most trivial incident, which may operate upon this intolerable agitation of soul. I have indeed no abhorrence of danger, except in its absolute effect and terror. In this unnerved, in this pitiable condition, I feel that the period will sooner or later arrive when I must abandon life and reason altogether in some struggle with the grim phantasm of fear. Anyways, Raiders, hi, I am Nanami Eiko. I am your siren at the sea. I play video games. I do variety things. Today is a variety thing. We're playing, we read until we get tired because it is late. And I don't want to wake the neighbors. I was going to do Dead by Daylight, but I realized how late it was. And my brother says I'm kind of loud when I play games. I learned, moreover, fear at intervals, and through broken and equivocal hints, another singular feature of his mental condition. He was enchained by certain superstitious impressions in regard to the dwelling which he had tenanted, and whence for many years he had never ventured forth in regard to an influence whose supposititious, Lord have mercy, force was conveyed in terms too shadowy here to be restated, an influence which some peculiarities in the mere form and substance of his family mansion had, by dint of long sufferance, he said, obtained over his spirit, an effective physique of all grey walls and turrets, in the dim tarn into which they all looked down, and had at length brought about upon the moral of his existence. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Catacomb, darling. He admitted, however, although with hesitation, that much of the peculiar gloom which thus afflicted him could be traced to a more natural and far more palpable origin, to the severe and long-continued illness, indeed, to the evidently approaching dissolution of a tenderly beloved sister, his sole companion for years, his last and only relative on earth, her decease, he said, which a bitterness which I can never forget would leave him helpless and the frail, the last of the ancient race of the Ushers. While he spoke, and Lady Madeline, for so she was called, passed slowly through the remote portion of the apartment, and, without having noticed my presence, disappeared. I regarded her with an utter astonishment not unmingled with dread, and yet I found it impossible to account for such feelings. A sensation of stupor oppressed me, as my eyes followed her retreating steps, when a door at length closed upon her. My glance sought instinctively and eagerly the countenance of the brother, but he had buried his face in his hands, and I could only perceive that a far more than ordinary wanness had overspread the emaciated fingers through which trickled many passionate tears. The disease of the Lady Madeline had long baffled the skill of her physicians. A settled apathy, a gradual wasting away of a person, and frequent although transient affections of a partially cataleptical character were the unusual diagnosis. It hurt, though. She had steadily borne up against the pressure of her malady, and had not betaken herself finally to bed. But on the closing in of the evening of my arrival at the house, she succumbed, as her brother told me, at night, with inexpressible agitation, to the prostrating power of the destroyer, and I had learned that the glimpse I had obtained of her person would thus probably be the last I should obtain, that the lady, at least while living, would be seen by me no more. For several days ensuing, her name was unmentioned by either Usher or myself, and during this period I was busied in earnest endeavors to alleviate the melancholy of my friend. We painted and read together. I listened, as if in a dream, to the wild improvisations of his speaking guitar. And thus, as a closer and still closer intimacy admitted me more unreservedly into the recesses of his spirit, the more bitterly I did perceive the futility of all attempt at cheering a mind from which darkness, as if inherent positive quality, poured forth upon all objects of the moral and physical universe in one unceasing radiation of gloom. I shall ever bear about me a memory of many solemn hours thus I spent alone with the master of the house of Usher. Yet I should fail in any attempt to convey the idea of exact character of the studies or of the occupations in which he involved me, or led me the way. An excited and highly distempered ideality threw a sulphurous luster after all. His long improvised dirges will forever ring in my ears. Among other things, I hold painfully in mind a certain singular perversion and amplification of the wild air of the last waltz of Von Weber from the paintings over which his elaborate fancy brooded, and which grew touch by touch in vagueness, and why I shuddered the more thrillingly because I shuddered not knowing why from these paintings, vivid as their images now are before me. I would in vain endeavor to educe why more than a small portion which should lie within the compass of merely written words, by the utter simplicity, by the nakedness of his designs. He arrested and overawed attention. If ever mortal painted an idea, that mortal was Roderick Usher. For me, at least. In the circumstances then surrounding me, there arose out of pure abstractions which the hypochondriac contrived to throw upon his canvas an intensity of intolerable awe, no shadow of which I ever felt, yet felt in the contemplation of the certainty flowing yet to concrete reveries of Fuseli. One of the phantasmagoric conceptions of my friend, partaking not so rigidly of the spirit of abstraction, may be shadowed forth, although feebly, in words. A small picture presented in the interior of an immensely long and rectangular vault or tunnel, with low walls, smooth, white, and without interruption or device. Certain accessory points of the design served well to convey the idea that this excavation lay at an exceeding depth below the surface of the earth. No outlet was observed in any portion of its vast extent, and no torch or other artificial source of light was discernible, yet a flood of intense rays rolled throughout and bathed the whole in a ghastly and inappropriate splendor. I have just spoken of all that morbid condition of the auditory nerve which rendered all music intolerable to the sufferer. With the exception of certain effects of stringed instruments, it was, perhaps, the narrow limits to which he thus confined himself upon the guitar, which gave birth, in great measure, to the fantastic character of his performances. But the fervid facility of his impromptus could not be so accounted for. They must have been, and were, in the notes, as well as in words of his wild fantasies, for he not unfrequently accompanied himself with rhyme verbal improvisations, the result of that intense mental collectedness and concentration, to which I have previously alluded as observable only in particular moments of the highest artificial excitement. The words of one of these rhapsodies I have easily remembered. I was perhaps the one forcibly impressed with it, as he gave it, because in under mystic current of its meaning, I fancied that I perceived, and for the first time, a full consciousness on the part of Usher of the tottering of his lofty reason upon her throne. The verses, which were entitled The Haunted Palace, ran very neatly, if not accurate, thus: in the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once a fair and stately palace, radiant palace, reared its head. In the monarch thoughts dominion it stood there. Never stirred bread opinion over fabric half so fair. Banners yellow, glorious, golden, on its roof did float and flow. This, all time, was in the olden time long ago, and every gentle air that dallied in that sweet day along the ramparts plumed and pallid, a winged odor went away. Wanderers in that happy valley, through two luminous windows, saw spirits moving musically to a lute's well-tuned law. Round about a throne were sitting, in state his glory well befitting. The ruler of the realm was seen, and all with pearl and ruby glowing was the fair palace door, through which came flowing, flowing, and sparkling evermore, a troop of echoes, whose sweet duty was but to sing, in the voices of surpassing beauty, the wit and wisdom of their king. But evil things and robed sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall dawn upon him desolate, and round about his home the glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim remembered story of the old time entombed, and travelers now within that valley through the red-litten windows see vast forms that move fantastically to a discordant melody, wild like a rapid ghastly river. Through the pale door a hideous throng rush out forever, and laugh but smile no more. I well remember that suggestions arising from this ballad led us into the train of thought, wherein there became a manifest an option of Usher's which I mention not so much on account of its novelty, for other men have thought thus, as on the account of the pertinacity with which he had maintained it. This option in its general form, by Cassius, by the way, was that of the sentience of all vegetable things, but in his disordered fancy the idea had assumed a more daring character and trespassed under certain conditions upon the kingdom of in organization. I lack words to express the full extent or the earnest abandon of his persuasion. The belief, however, was connected, as I have previously hinted, with the greystones of the home of his forefathers. The conditions of the sentience had been here, he imagined, fulfilled in the method of collocation of these stones, in the order of their arrangement, as well as in that of the many fungi which overspread them, and of decayed trees which stood around above all, in the long, undisturbed endurance of this arrangement, and in reduplication, in the still waters of Tarn, its evidence, the evidence of sentience, was to be seen, he said. And I here started as he spoke, in the gradual yet certain condensation of the atmosphere of their own about the waters and the walls. The result was discoverable, he added, in the silent yet importune and terrible influence which for centuries had molded the destinies of his family, and which made him, what I now saw him, what he was. You're such a good boy, Cassius. I hope you have a good sleep, darling. Such opinions need no comment, and I will make none. Our books, the books which for years had formed no small portion of the mental existence of the invalid, were, as might be supposed, in strict keeping with the character of phantasm. We pored together over such works as, that is a lot of French, I think, Brevet de Châteauneuf of Gresson, the Belphegor of Machiavelli, the Heaven and Hell of Swedenborg, the Subterranean Voyage of Nicholas Kim by Holberg, the Chiromancy of Robert Blood, of Jean de Indagny. Lord have mercy. I'm not good with French, guys. All these words are probably fucked. And of De la Chambler, the journey into the blue distance of Tieck, the city of the sun of Campanella. One favorite volume was an octavo version of Directorium Inquisitorium by the Dominican Aymeric de Dijon, and there were passages in Pomponius Mela about old African satyrs and Egyptians, over which Usher would sit dreaming for hours. His chief delight, however, was found in the perusal of an exceedingly rare and curious book in quarto Gothic, a manual of a forgotten church. This one's gonna get fucked too. The Vigile Votorium Secundum Rome Excelia Magnetoi. I could not help but think of the wild ritual of this work and his probable influence upon the hypochondriac, when one evening, having informed me abruptly that Lady Madeline was no more, he stated his intention of preserving her corpse for a fortnight, previously to his final interment. In one of the numerous vaults within the main walls of the building. A worldly reason, however, assigned for this singular proceeding was one I did not feel at liberty to dispute. The brother had been led to his resolution, so he told me, by consideration of his unusual character of the malady of the deceased, of certain obtrusive and eager inquiries on the part of his medical men, and of the remote and exposed solution of the burial ground of the family. I will not deny that when I called to mind the sinister countenance of the person whom I met upon the staircase on the day of my arrival at the house. I had no desire to oppose what I had regarded as at best but a harmless and by no means unnatural precaution. At the request of Usher, I personally aided him in the arrangements for the temporary entombment. The body having been encoffined, we two alone bore it to rest. The vault in which we placed it, and which had been so long unopened that our torches, half smothered in its oppressive atmosphere, gave us little opportunity for investigation, was small, damp, and entirely without the means of ignition for light. Lying at great depth immediately beneath the portion of the building in which was my own sleeping apartment, it had been used, apparently, in remote feudal times for the worst purposes of donjon keep, and in later days as a place of a deposit for powder or some highly combustible substance as a portion of its floor, and the whole interior of the long archway through which we reached it were carefully sheathed with copper. The door of massive iron had been also similarly protected. Its immense weight caused an unusually sharp grating sound, as if it moved upon its hinges. Having deposited our mournful burden upon trestles within this region of horror, we partially turned aside the yet unscrewed lid of the coffin, and looked upon the face of a tenant, a striking similitude between the brother and sister now first arrested my attention. And Usher, divining perhaps my thoughts, murmured out some few words from which I learned that the deceased and himself had been twins, and that sympathies of a scarcely intelligible nature had always existed between them. Our glances, however, rested not long upon the dead, for we could not regard her unawed. The disease which had thus entombed the lady in the maturity of youth had left, as usual in all maladies of a strict cataleptical character, the mockery of a faint blush upon the bosom and the face, and that suspiciously lingering smile upon the lip, which is so terrible in death. We were placed and screwed down the lid, and having secured the door of iron, made our way with toil into the scarcely less gloomy apartments of the upper portion of the house. And now, some days of bitter grief have elapsed, an observable change came over the features of the mental disorder of my friend. His ordinary manner had vanished. His ordinary occupations were neglected or forgotten. He roamed from chamber to chamber with hurried, unequal, and objectless steps. The pallor of his countenance had assumed, if possible, a more ghastly hue, but the luminousness of his eye had utterly gone out. The once occasional huskiness of his tone was heard no more, and a tremulous quaver, as if of extreme terror, habitually characterized in his utterance. There were times, indeed, when I thought his unceasingly agitated mind was laboring with some oppressive secret, to divulge which he struggled for the necessary courage. At times, again, I obliged to resolve all into the mere inexplicable vagaries of madness, for I beheld him gazing upon vacancy for long hours in an attitude of the profoundest attention, as if listening to some imaginary sound. It was no wonder that his condition terrified, that it infected me. I felt creeping upon me, by slow yet certain degrees, a wild influence of his own fantastic yet impressive superstitions. It was especially upon retiring to bed late in the 7th or 8th day, after placing of the Lady Madeline within the donjon, that I experienced the full power of such feelings. Sleep came not near my couch, while the hours waned and waned away. I struggled to reason off the nervousness which had dominion over me. I endeavored to believe that much, if not all, of what I felt was due to the bewildering influence of the gloomy furniture of the room, of the dark and tattered draperies, which tortured into the motion by the breath of a rising tempest, swaying fitfully to and fro upon the walls, and rustled uneasily about the decorations of the bed, but my efforts were fruitless. An irrepressible tremor gradually pervaded my frame, and at length there sat upon my very heart an incubus of utterly causeless alarm. Shaking this off with a gasp and a struggle, I lifted myself upon the pillows, and peering earnestly within the intense darkness of the chamber, hearkened. I know not why, except that an instinctive spirit prompted me to. Certain low and indefinite sounds which came through the pauses of the storm at long intervals, I knew not whence. Overpowered by an intense sentiment of horror, unaccountable yet unendurable, I threw on my clothes with haste, for I felt that I should sleep no more during the night. And endeavored to arouse myself from the pitiable condition in which I had fallen by pacing rapidly to and fro through the apartment. I apologize. I had to mute for a second. I was like dying. Tee hee. Tee hee. Hi hi. I had taken but a few turns in this manner when a light step on the adjoining staircase arrested my attention. I presently recognized it as that of Usher. In an instant afterwards he rapped with a gentle touch at my door and entered, bearing a lamp. His countenance was as cadaverously wan, but moreover there was a species of mad hilarity in his eyes, and evidently restrained hysteria in his whole demeanor. His air appalled me, but anything was preferable to the solitude which I had so long endured, and I even welcomed his presence as a relief. "And have you not seen it?" he said abruptly, after having stared about him for some moments in silence. "You have not then seen it, but stay, you shall." Thus speaking, and having carefully shaded his lamp, he hurried to one of the casements and threw it freely open to the storm. The impetuous fury of entering gusts nearly lifted us from our feet. It was indeed a tempestuous, yet sternly beautiful night, and one wildly singular in its terror and its beauty. A whirlwind had apparently collected its force in our vicinity, for there were frequent and violent alterations in the direction of the wind, and the exceeding density of the cloud, which hung so low as to press upon the turrets of the house, did not prevent our perceiving the lifelike velocity with which they flew careering from all points against each other without passing away into the distance. I say that even their exceeding density did not prevent our perceiving this, yet We had no glimpse of the moon or stars, nor was there any flashing forth of lightning. But under the surfaces of huge masses of agitated vapor, as well as terrestrial objects immediately around us, were glowing in the unnatural light of a faintly luminous and distinctly visible gas exhalation which hung about and enshrouded this mansion. You must not. You shall not behold this, said I shudderingly to Usher, as I led him with gentle violence from the window to a seat. These appearances which bewilder you are merely electrical phenomena, not uncommon, or it may be that they have their ghastly origin in the rank miasma of the tarn. Let us close this casement. The air is chilling and dangerous to your frame. Here is one of your favorite romances I will read, and you shall listen. And so we will pass away this terrible night together. If you do not shut up, Smash, I will fucking fight you. Lovingly. The antique volume which I had taken up was the Mad Tryst of Sir Lancelot Canning, but I had called it a favorite of Usher's more in sad jest than in earnest, for in truth there is little in its uncouth and unimaginative prolixity, Lord have mercy, which could have had interest for the lofty and spiritual ideality of my friend. It was, however, the book immediately at hand, and I indulged a vague hope that the excitement which now agitated the hypochondriac might find relief, for the history of mental disorder is full of similar anomalies. Fight, fight, fight. Hi, Virus. How you doing, sweetie? It's been a while. I hope you're having a good day. Even in the extremeness of the folly which I should read, could I have judged indeed by the wild, overstrained air of vivacity which he hearkened, or apparently hearkened, to the words of the tale, I might have congratulated myself upon the success of my design. I had arrived at the well-known portion of the story where Ethelred, the hero of Tryst, having sought in vain for peaceable admission into the dwelling of the hermit, proceeds to make good an entrance by force. We should catch up sometime, Virus. It could be fun. Here, it will be remembered, the words of the narrative run thus. And Ethelred, who was by nature of a doughty heart, and who was now mighty withal, on account of the powerfulness of the wine which he had drunken, waited no longer to hold parley with the hermit, who in sooth was of an obstinate and maliceful turn, but feeling the rain upon his shoulders, the fearing the rising of the tempest uplifted his mace outright, and with blows made quickly room in the plankings of the door for his gauntleted hands, now pulling therewith sturdily. Can confirm school's closed, but work doesn't. But I fixed my heated gloves, so I'm immortal now. Congrats, Smash. At the termination of the sentence, I fucking skipped a whole fucking paragraph. Lol. Now pulling therewith sturdily, he so cracked and ripped and tore all asunder that the noise of the dry and hollow-sounding wood all around and reverberated throughout the forest. At the termination of the sentence I started, and for a moment paused, For it appeared to me, although I at once concluded that my excited fancy had deceived me, it appeared to me that from some very remote portion of the mansion there came, indistinctly, to my ears, which might have been, in its exact similarity of character, the echo, but a stifled and dull one certainly, of the cracking and ripping sound which Sir Lancelot had so particularly described. It was beyond doubt a coincidence alone which had arrested my attention, for amid the rattling of the sashes of the casements and the ordinary commingled noises of the still increasing storm, the sound in itself had nothing surely which should have been interested or disturbed me. I continued the story. But the good champion Ethelred, now entering within the door, was sore enraged and amazed to perceive no signal of the merciful hermit, but in the stead thereof a dragon of a scaly and prodigious demeanour, and of a fiery tongue, which Satan guard before a palace of gold, with a floor of silver, and upon the wall there hung a shield of shining brass, with this legend enwritten: Who entereth herein, a conqueror hath been, who slayeth the dragon, the shield he shall win. And Ethelred uplifted his mace, and struck upon the head of the dragon which fell before him, and gave up his pesty breath, with a shriek so horrid and harsh, and withal so piercing, that Ethelred had fain to close his ears with his hands against the dreadful noise of it, the like whereof was never heard before. Here again I paused abruptly, and now, with a feeling of wild amazement, for there could be no doubt whatever that, in this instance, I did actually hear, although from what direction it proceeded I found it impossible to say, a low and apparently distant but harsh, protracted, and most unusual screaming or grating sound, the counterpart of what my fancy had already conjured up for the dragon's unnatural shriek as described by the romancer. Oppressed as I certainly was upon the occurrence of this second and most extraordinary coincidence, by the thousand conflicting sensations, in which wonder and extreme terror were predominant, I still retained sufficient presence of mind to avoid exciting by any observation the sensitive nervousness of my companion. I was by no means certain that he had noticed the sounds in question, although assuredly a strange alteration had during the last few minutes taken place in his demeanour. From a position fronting my own, he had gradually brought round his chair so as to sit his face to the door of the chamber, and thus I could but partially perceive his features, although I saw that his lips trembled as if he were murmuring inaudibly. His head had drooped upon his breast, yet I knew that he was not asleep, from the wide and rigid opening of the eye that I caught a glimpse of it in profile. The motion of his body, too, was at variance with this idea, for he rocked from side to side with a gentle yet constant uniform sway. Having rapidly taken notice of all this, I resumed the narrative of Sir Lancelot, which thus proceeded. And now, the champion, having escaped the terrible fury of the dragon, bethinking himself of the brazen shield, and of the breaking up of the enchantment which was upon it, removed the carcass from out of the way before him, and approached valorously over the silver pavement of the castle to which the shield was upon the wall, which in sooth tarried not for his full coming, but pealed down at his feet upon the silver floor, with a mighty, great, and terrible ringing sound. No sooner had these syllables passed upon my lips, than as if the shield of brass had indeed at the moment fallen heavily upon the floor of silver, I became aware of a distinct, hollow, metallic, and clangorous, yet apparently muffled reverberation. Completely unnerved, I leaped to my feet, but the measured rocking movement of Usher was undisturbed. I rushed to the chair on which he sat. His eyes were bent fixedly before him, and throughout his whole countenance there reigned a stony rigidity. But as I placed my hand upon his shoulder, there came a strong shudder over his whole person. A sickly smile quivered about his lips, and I saw that he spoke in a low and hurried and gibbering murmur, as if unconscious of my presence. Bending closely over him, I at length drank in the hideous import of his words. Not hear it? Yes, I hear it, and have heard it. Long, long, long. Many minutes, many hours, many days have I heard it, and I dared not. Oh, pity me, miserable wretch that I am. I dared not. I dared not speak. We have put her living in the tomb. Said I not that my senses were acute? I now tell you I heard her first feeble movements in the hollow coffin. I heard them many, many days ago. Yet I dared not. I dared not speak. And now tonight, Ethelred, the breaking of the hermit's door, and the death cry of the dragon, and the clangor of the shield, say rather the rending of her coffin, and the grating of the iron hinges of her prison, and her struggles within the coppered archway of the vault. Oh, whither shall I fly? Will she not be here anon? Is she not hurrying to upbraid me for my haste? Have I not heard her footstep on the stair? Do I not distinguish that heavy and horrible beating of her heart? Madman! Here he sprang furiously to his feet and shrieked out the syllables as if in the effort he was giving his soul. Madman! I tell you that she now stands without the door, as if in some superhuman energy of the utterance there had been found potency of a spell. The huge antique panels, which the speaker pointed, drew slowly back. Upon the instant, their ponderous and ebony jaws. It was the work of the rushing gust, but then without the doors there did stand the lofty and enshrouded figure of Lady Madeline of Usher. There was blood upon her white robes, and the evidence of the bitter struggle upon every portion of her emaciated form. For a moment she remained trembling and reeling to and fro upon the threshold. Then, with a low moaning cry, fell heavily inward upon the person of her brother, and her violent and now final death agonies bore him to the floor, a corpse, and a victim to the terrors he had anticipated. Hi, darling. Hi, Miggy. How you doing, sweetheart? I hope you're having a good day. From that chamber and from that mansion I fled aghast. The storm was still abroad in all its wrath, as I found myself crossing Old Causeway. Suddenly there shot along the path of a wild light, and I turned to see whence a gleam so unusual could have issued, for the vast house and its shadows were alone behind me. The radiance was that of full setting and blood-red moon, which now shone vividly through the once barely discernible fissure of which I have before spoken, as extending from the roof of the building in a zigzag direction to the base. While I gazed, this fissure rapidly widened. There came a fierce breath of whirlwind. The entire orb of the satellite burst at once upon my sight. My brain reeled as I saw the mighty walls rushing asunder. There was a long, tumultuous shouting, sound like the voice of 1,000 waters, and the deep and dank tarn at my feet flows sullenly and silently over the fragments of the house of Usher. Yay, you finished it, Fuzzy. I'll add this one. This is a lot. We might have to skip this one for now. This one will be another day. Yeah, this one is 30 pages. So we could put the thing in here and we're gonna go read poetry. Poetry now, chat. Yay, poetry. Because, good lord, I'm not reading 30 pages lovingly. The next short story we'll read on another day is gonna be The Murders of Rue Morgue. Only because of how long it is. Give me a second, darlings. Oh, God. Ah, goodness. Should I read? Spears of Dead. Oh, that was good. No. We are looking for something a bit short. That's not too short. I could technically read The Telltale Heart again, because I like that one, but also I feel like y'all are tired of me reading that one. I do that one. This one is decently long. But yeah, hi everyone. For those of y'all just coming in, I hope y'all can relax and have a good time. That was one long ass story, no? We're gonna read yeah. We're gonna read The Raven, guys. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "Is some visitor?" I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book's surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore, and the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So now, to the still beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more. Presently, my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. Sir, said I, or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, hearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token. And the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon I heard again a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the obeisance made he, not an instant stopped or stayed he, but with my lord or lady perched upon my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave of stern decorum and countenance it wore, though thy crest be born and shaven thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim, an ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly foe, to hear it discourse so plainly, though its answer bore little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with the seeing bird above chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that wood word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather that he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken. Doubtless, said I, what it utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope a melancholy bore of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling. Straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore, meant in croaking, nevermore. Karaoke rap practice. Smitten boss, smitten boss. This I sat, engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the full whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushioned velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining, with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, flung by angels, whose faint foothills trickled upon the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by the angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Fuck you, Kiva, I don't want to sit up. Fine. Is that better? Y'all saw that posture, Jesus Christ. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter, sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore. Desolate yet, all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on his home by horror haunted. Tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by the heaven that bends above us, and by God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if, within the distant Aidenn, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Hi everyone. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Yeah. OBS does not like stories. It seems. Well, hi everyone. Hi cutie. Yeah. It does not like me very much. OBS being gremlin, you know how it be. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above thy door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take the form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven never flitting, still is sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws a shadow upon the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Yeah, that one was the Raven guy. Hey Smash, do you want to do the Bell story? You want to do the Bell story again? I feel like we should do the Bell story. I feel like everybody likes the Bell story. I say Bell like 1,000 times. guys. No, the bell. The one that says bell like 30,000 times. Do not take a shot every time I say bell for this story because it is a lot. This one is called The Bells. Hear the sledges with the bells. Silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night. All the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme. The tintinnabulation, Lord have mercy, this word, as so musically wells from the bells, 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 bells. From the jingling and tinkling of the bells. Not again. Lord. Yes, that story. Yes, Smash, this one. Yes. One that says bells like 90,000 times. Hear the mellow wedding bells. Golden bells? What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight. From the molten golden notes, and in tune, what a liquid ditty floats. To the turtle dove that listens, while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously swells. How it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels, of the swinging and the ringing of the bells, 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 of the bells, 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 bells. The rhyming of the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarm bells, brazen bells. What tale of terror now the turbulency tells? In the startled ear of night, how they scream out their affright. Too much horrified to speak, they can only shriek, shriek out of tune. In the clamorous appealing of the mercy of the fire, in a mad expostulation with the deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, 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 with a desperate desire, and in resolute endeavor now to sit, or never, by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, bells, bells. What a terror, what a tale their terror tells of despair. How they clang and crash and roar. What a horror they outpour on the bosom of the palpitating air. Yet by ear it fully knows, by the twanging and the clanging, how the danger ebbs and flows. Yet the ear distinctly tells, in the jangling and the wrangling, how the danger sinks and swells. By the sinking or the swelling in the anger of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, 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 bells. In the clamor and clangor of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells. What a world of solemn thought their monotony compels. In the silence of the night, how we shiver with affright at the melancholy meaning of their tone, for every sound that floats from the rust within their throats. is a groan, and the people are the people, they that dwell up in the steeple, all alone, who tolling, 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 in that muffled monotone, feel a glory in so rolling on the human heart a stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls, and their king it is who tolls, and he rolls, 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 rolls. The paean from the bells, and with his merry bosom swells, and with the pain of the bells, and he dances and he yells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhythm, to the paean of the bells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme, to the throbbing of the bells, 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 to the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, 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 as he knells, 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 in a happy runic rhyme, to the rolling of the bells, 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 to the tolling of the bells, 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 to the moaning and groaning of the bells. That was bells, guys. Did you like the bells? I like the bells. Especially when they're singing war crimes, apparently. Gosh, the bells, man. The bells haunt me. The bells haunt me, Chad. The bells, the bells. Bells, 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 bells. Bells out of 10. Back. Bells. I feel like that's a good, like, ASMR story, though, because, like, the rhythmic of the bells, the way I say bells, 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 you know? Pretty cool bells, you know? I feel like if I say bells one more time, I'm gonna fucking lose it, though. As much as I love the bells. The bells are... The bell tolls, guys, the bell. The bell tolls. The bell tolls. The bell. The bell tolls. Oh, goodness me. But for whom? What do you mean? The bell tolls? What do you mean? But for whom does the bell toll? The bell tolls for all of us because the bells are the beating of our hearts, or something of that nature. The next one is called Alone, since we're doing short poems at the moment. Because I don't want to go into another. But for whom the cunt serves. The cunt serves no one. The cunt is cunty enough without anyone to serve. Hi, Kine. How are you doing, sweetie? I hope you're having a good night. You're beautiful. Mash, can we get a shout out for Kine, please? I love that man. He's great. One of my favorite people. If you can't, I can. Yeah, exactly. There we go. You were playing Woowa. Wow. From childhood's hours I have not been, as others were, I have not seen. As others saw, I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken my sorrow I could not awaken. You're beautiful. Go say shit. Say shit. What are you gonna do? Nothing? Exactly. Wanna know why? 'cause you're the best. Mwah. We love you. My sorrow I could not awaken, my heart to joy at the same tone, and all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life was drawn from every depth of good and the mystery which binds me still. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm and the cloud which took the form when the form of heaven was blue of a demon in my view. You cannot implode on me. Come on, darling. You don't have to implode. Ah, yes. We love our beautiful people here. I love all of you. Thank you all for coming into late night goofing off with Nana. That's fun, right? Not really goofing off, but it's goofing off enough, right? I apologize for the late night goofiness. I just didn't want to disturb anybody's sleep. So we don't do that here. Alright. Next one is The City in the Sea. Lo, Death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone. Far down within the dim west, where the good and the bad and the worst and the best have gone to their eternal rest. Their shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers that tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours, around by lifting winds forgot. Resignedly, beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. No rays from the holy heaven come down on the long night time of the town, but light from out the lurid sea streams up the turrets silently, gleams up the pinnacles far and free, domes of spires, of kingly halls, of fanes, of Babylon like walls, up the shadowy forgotten bowers, the cultured ivy and stone flowers, of many and many a marvelous shrine, whose friezes intertwine the viol, the violet, and the vine. Resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. So bend the turrets and shadows there, that all seem pendulous in the air. While from a proud tower in the town, death looks gigantically down. There open fanes and gaping graves yawn level with the luminous waves. But the riches that there lie in each idol's diamond eye, not the gaily jeweled dead tempt the waters from their bed, where no ripples curl alas along the wilderness of glass. No swellings tell that the winds may be upon some far-off happier sea. No heavings hint that winds have on seas was hideously serene. And lo, a stir is in the air, the wave. There is a movement there, as if towers had thrown aside and slightly sinking the dull tide, as if their tops had feebly given a void within the filmy heaven. The waves have now a redder glow, the hours from breathing faint and low, and when amid no earthly moans, down, 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 shall settle hence, hell, rising from 1,000 thrones, shall do it reverence. Do we want to say fuck it and actually read room work? That's another one I like. Mask of Red Death is good. The Pits and the Pendulum's long. Like hella long. I think we can do this mayhaps. Because this one doesn't seem so long. But this one is also very, very short. This one is called The Black Cat. It is really fucked up. So I apologize ahead of time. Because, this cat gets... This is your trigger warning because it is, it's very bad. If you know, you know. If you don't, well, you're about to find out. We'll do the murder room work, next time we do this, because it is 30 pages long. Need to hear more stories more often in the future. I do love reading. I wanted to do more reading actually, because I do love the reading stories. It is relaxing and a lot of fun. Because it fixes my voice and I don't really have to do much except sit here and read to you lovely people. I hope that's okay. I hope y'all accept that. I love you all. Love you, chat. Let's get on with the story, shall we? This one is The Black Cat. For the most wild, yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief, mad indeed would I be to expect it, in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet, mad am I not. And very surely I do not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburthen my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world plainly Jesus Christ, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events and their consequences. Yet these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet I will not attempt to expound them to me. They have presented little but horror. To many they will seem less than terrible than Marquez. Hereafter, perhaps, some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace. Some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive in the circumstances I detail with awe nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. From my infancy, I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This, peculi- this peculiarity of character grew with my growth, and in my manhood I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at trouble of explaining the nature or intensity of the gratification thus derivable. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early and was happy to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality towards the domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black and sagacious to an astonishing degree. And speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I mention the matter at all for no better reason than it just happens to be just now to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Yeah, he had a personal zoo, alright? This story gets really fucked up, and I'm so sorry for anyone who, yeah. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew, day by day, more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length, I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still remained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog, when by accident or through affection they came in my way. But my disease grew upon me, for what the disease is like alcohol, and at length even Pluto, who was now becoming old and consequently feverish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. I am so sorry, this is about to get gross. One night, returning home much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him, when, in his fright at my violence, inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, gin nurtured, thrilled every fiber of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from the socket. I blush, I burn, I shudder, while I pen the damnable atrocity. When reason returned with the morning, when I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse, for the crime of which I had been guilty, but it was at best feeble and equivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess, and soon drowned in wine all memories of the deed. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of his lost eye presented, it is true, a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of the creature which had once so loved me, but this feeling soon gave place to irritation, and then came, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. Of this spirit philosophy takes no account, yet I am not sure that my soul lives, and I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the individual primary faculties or sentiments which give direction of the character of man, who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile and silly action for no other reason than because he knows he should not. Here have we not a perpetual inclination, in the teeth of our best judgment, and to violate which is law, merely because we understand it to be such? No, it sounds fucking disgusting. Oh god. The spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue, and finally consummate the injury I have inflicted upon the unoffending Ew. One morning, in cold blood, I slipped a noose around its neck and hung it from the limb of the tree. Hung it with tears streaming from my eyes, and with the bitterest remorse at my heart. Hung it because I knew it had loved me, and because I felt it had given me no reason of offense. Hung it because I knew that in so doing I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that could jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. Caitlin's. On the night of the day on which this cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth swallowed up, and I resigned myself thenceforward to despair. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the atrocity, but I am detailing a chain of facts, and wish not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. This exception was found in a compartment wall, not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and a can which rested in the head of my bed. The plastering there, in great measure, resisted the action of the fire, a fact which I attributed to having been recently spread. About this wall, a dense crowd were collected, and many persons seemed to be examining a particular portion of it with my very minute and eager attention. The words strange, singular, and other similar expressions excited my curiosity as I approached and saw, as if graven in bas relief upon a white surface, a figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with the accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope around the animal's neck. This is well, this will be the last story for the night, but ew, story's gross. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. But at length the reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in the garden adjacent to the house, upon the alarm of the fire. This garden had been immediately filled by the crowd, by some of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown through an open window into my chamber. This had probably been done with the view of arousing me from sleep. The falling of the other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the lime of which was the flame, and the ammonia from the carcass. It then accomplished the portraiture as I saw it. Although I thus readily accounted for my reason, it did not altogether to my comfort. Oh my Jesus, hello. That scared the fuck out of me again. Hi, how's it going, readers? Our last resort, hello, sweetie. It's been a while. We are reading The Black Cat. How's it going, sweetie? I hope your day is going well. I hope. Hey Smash, if you're here, can you do something for me? Lovingly? Mwah. You forgot the shout out, my darling, but it's beautiful. We love it. Although I thus readily accounted my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not the less fail to make a deep impression upon my fancy. For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat, and during this period there came into my spirit a half sentiment that seemed but was not remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look about me among the vile haunts which I now habitually frequented, for another pet of the same species and of somewhat similar appearance, with which to supply its place. How are you doing, Last Resort? We are reading The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. It is a really fucked up story. Couldn't believe the cat, apparently. Not wrong, not wrong. This story is fucking disgusting. I love animals, so this is hurting my feelings a little bit, but you know, we here. Lord have mercy. Hold on, let me sit up real quick. Yeah, fuck me. Anyways, I am Nanami Eiko. I am your Siren of the Sea. If y'all don't know me, I play variety games and I do variety shit. This is one of the variety shits tonight. This is the last story for the night though, because I do have a stream at 9 in the morning. Cozy, yeah. I'm glad. I hope that you, sit down by the fire, get some snacks, get some drinks, have a good time. The adorable gremlin is doing fine. We're reading about a cat who had been hung. One night, as I sat, half stupefied, in the den of more than infamy, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object reposing upon the head of one of the immense hogsheads of gin, or of rum, which constituted the chief furniture of the apartment. I had been looking steadily at the top of this hogshead for some minutes, and what now caused me to surprise was the fact that I had not sooner perceived the object thereupon I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a very large one, fully as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every respect but one. Pluto had not a white hair upon any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, although indefinite splotch of white, covering nearly the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately rose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my notice. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. I at once offered to purchase it of the landlord, but this person made no claim to it, knew nothing of it, or had never seen it before. I thought that one book I forgot was the show cover where the child goes slide and then shred in pieces. Oh dear God. I continued my caresses, and then when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition. Jesus. Thank you for the follow, darling. I'm glad you're here. I hope you have a good time. Hope you rest easy. Because that's what this is. We're resting. I continued my caresses, and when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. I permitted it to do so, occasionally stooping and petting it as I proceeded. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once, and became immediately a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. This was just the reverse of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was. Its evident fondness for myself, rather disgusted and annoyed by slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty, preventing me from physically abusing it. I did not, some weeks, strike or otherwise violently ill-use it, but gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unutterable loathing, and to flee silently from its odious presence, as from the breath of a pestilence. What added no doubt to my hatred of the beast was the discovery of the morning after I brought it home that, like Pluto, it had also been deprived of one of its eyes. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, whom, as I already said, possessed in a high degree that humanity of feeling which had once been my distinguishing trait, and the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity which it would be difficult to make to the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair, or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. If I arose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fastening its long, sharp claws into my dress, clamber in this manner to my breast at such times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow. I was yet withheld from doing so, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess it at once, by absolute dread of this beast. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at a loss how otherwise to define it. I am almost ashamed to own, yes, even in this felon's cell, I am almost ashamed to own that the terror and the horror with which the animal inspired me had been heightened by one of my merest chimeras it would be possible to conceive. My wife had called my attention more than once to this character of the mark of white hair of which I have spoken, and which constituted the sole visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that mark, although large, it had originally been very indefinite, but by slow degrees nearly imperceptible, in which for a long time my reason struggled to reject as fanciful, it had not, at length, assumed a rigorous distinctness of outline. It was now the representation of an object that I shuddered to name, and for this, above all, I loathed and dreaded, and would have to rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say, the image of a ghastly thing, of the gallows. O mournful and terrible engine of horror and crime, of agony and death. And now, was I indeed wretched beyond the wretchedness of mere humanity? And a brute beast whose fellow I had contemptuously destroyed. A brute beast to work out for me a man, fashioned in the image of the high God. So much of the insufferable woe, alas! Neither by day nor by night knew I the blessing of rest any more. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone. In the latter, I started hourly from the dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face, and its vast weight, an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent eternally upon my heart. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates. The darkest and most evil of thoughts, the moodiness of my usual temper, increased the hatred of all things and all of mankind, while, from the sudden, frequent, ungovernable outbursts of fury, which I had now blindly abandoned myself, my uncomplaining wife, alas, was the most usual and the most patient of sufferers. One day she accompanied me upon some household errand into the cellar of the old building which our poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat followed me down the deep steps, and nearly throwing me headlong, exasperated me into madness. Uplifting axe and forgetting in my wrath the childish dread which had hitherto stayed my hand, I aimed a blow at the animal, which of course would have proved instantly fatal had it descended as I wished. But this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife, goaded by the interference into a rage more demoniacal. I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith, and with entire deliberation, of the task concealing the body. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being observed by the neighbors. Many projects entered my mind. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another, I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. Again, I deliberated about casting it in a well in the yard, about packing it into a box, as if to merchandise, with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally, I hit upon what I considered a far better expedient of either of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are recorded to have walled up their victims. For a purpose such as this cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed and had lately been plastered throughout with rough plaster, which the dampness and atmosphere had prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of the walls was a projection caused by false chimney or fireplace that had filled up and made no resemble the red of the color. I had made no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at some point, insert the corpse, and wall the whole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. And in this calculation I was not deceived. By means of a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, having carefully deposited the body against the inner wall. I propped it in that position while, with little trouble, I relaid the whole structure as it originally stood. Having procured mortar, sand, and hair, with every possible precaution, I prepared a plaster which could not be distinguished from old, and with this I carefully went over the new brickwork, which I had finished. I felt satisfied was all right. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with the minutest care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, "Here at least, then, my labor has not been in vain." My next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much wretchedness, for I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at the moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate. But it appeared that crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and had forebode to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe, or to imagine, the deep and blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. It did not make an appearance during the night, and thus for one night, at least, since its introduction to the house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept even with the burden of murder upon my soul. The second and third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again I breathed as a free man. The monster in my terror had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little. Some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Even a search had been instituted, but of course nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the fourth day of the assassination, a party of police came very unexpectedly into the house, and procured again to make a rigorous investigation of the premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment whatsoever. The officers bade me accompany them in their search. They left no nook and corner unexplored. At length, for the third or fourth time, they descended into the cellar. I quivered not even a muscle. My heart beat calmly, as the one who slumbers in innocence. I walked to the cellar from end to end. I folded up my arms upon my bosom and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. The glee of my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say but one word, by the way of triumph, and to render doubly sure their assurance of my guiltlessness. "Gentlemen," I said at last, the party ascended the steps, "I have delighted to allay your suspicions. I wish you all health, and a little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well constructed house," and the rabbit desired to say something easily. I scarcely knew what I had muttered at all. "I may say an excellently well constructed house. These walls—" "Are you going, gentlemen?" These walls are so solidly put together, and here, through a mere frenzy and bravado, I rapped heavily with a cane which I had held in my hand upon the very portion of the brickwork which stood the corpse of my wife of my bosom. But may God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the archfiend. No sooner than the reverberation of the blows sunk into the silence, but I was answered by a voice from within the tomb, a cry at first muffled and broken, like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud, continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman, a howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror, half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly from the throats of the damned in their agony, and demons that exult in damnation. Of my own thoughts, it is folly to speak. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant, the party upstairs remained motionless through extremity, terror, and of awe. In the next, a dozen of stout arms, toiling at the wall, it fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, a red extended mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose craft seduced me into murder, and whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman. I had walled up the monster up the tomb. That was a story, guys. That was a story. Good lord. Hi everyone. We are also done for the night. So good night, crazy. We love you. Lots of love, everyone. We gotta go find someone to raid. Who are we raiding today? I have no idea. It was a lot of fun, though. We need to read more. I feel like that's fun. Thank you, thank you. I'm about to take your books. Yeah, that one was a fucking doozy. Thank you. I try my best. I try to read once or twice a month, whether it be visual novels or what have you. So thank you for the follow, and I hope I can see you again soon, sweetheart. Lots of love, lots of affections. Thank you everyone for coming. We're going to go find someone to raid. See, who do we want? Let's see. We need English too, because we are English and don't want to send to places where things are not. Yeah, let's see. That one says she's a brat. I don't know if I want to send you guys to a Twitch part. That's not everyone. Let's see. We'll go to. How about Kitty Be Silly? Okay, works. I remember her. We'll do that. We'll raid her, cause that's nice. I don't actually know this person, so everybody be nice. Thank you for helping me find one smash because I was looking and I could not find one to save me. Oh. We cannot raid her at this time. She's not accepting raids or something, which is fine. Let's see. Kitty Be Silly is not. Let's see. want to send you guys to Valorant because Valorant's scary. And I don't want to like... What about this one? One seems fun. This one's cool, I think. We'll go to this person. He's pretty cute. Let's try this one. We'll see Hemiu. Here is the raid message, my love. And we're gonna pause our timer as we go tomorrow and stuff. Thank you everyone for coming in. You guys are amazing. I love you all very much. Yes, yes. I'm going to send you off now without switching to my offline screen because my offline screen is real loud for my stream ending screen. So we're gonna go to the offline screen like that. Bye everyone. I love you all.